15th century England was consumed with a series of conflicts, now referred to as the Wars of the Roses. Branches of the ruling Plantagenet dynasty, split into the houses of York and Lancaster, vied for control of England. Richard III, the head of the York branch, placed himself on the throne in 1483 after the death of his elder brother, Edward IV. He placed Edward's sons, his own nephews, Edward and Richard, in the Tower of London. The two boys, known through history as the Princes in the Tower, disappeared from the historical record soon afterwards. Henry Tudor, the remaining Lancastrian claimant to the English throne, returned from exile in France. His army defeated Richard III on August 22, 1485, at the Battle of Bosworth. The victor was crowned Henry VII, founding the Tudor dynasty. He married the eldest daughter of Edward IV, symbolically reuniting the houses of York and Lancaster under the Tudor banner. Henry VII and Elizabeth of York married in 1486. Later that same year, the marriage produced the first of 4 children who would live past childhood. He was named Arthur, Prince of Wales. Princess Margaret was born in 1489, followed by Henry in 1491, and finally the Princess Mary in 1496. Arthur Tudor was born September 20th, 1486, at Winchester Cathedral Priory. He was named Prince of Wales and was to be the second Tudor monarch. He was married to Catherine of Aragon, the youngest child of Isabella of Castile and Ferdinand of Aragon in 1501. Unfortunately, Arthur died several months later in 1502. His brief marriage would be a matter of religious and political significance years later during the reign of his brother, Henry VIII. Born on June 28, 1491, the second son of the reigning monarch, Henry was not raised to be king. He did receive a classical education in languages, theology, the arts, and numerous other subjects. Following the death of his brother Arthur in 1502, Henry became next in line for the throne. He was betrothed to Arthur's widow, Catherine of Aragon, as a means to preserve the relations between England and Spain. Henry VII died on April 21st, 1509, and Prince Henry was crowned Henry VIII on June 24th, 1509, along with his new bride, Catherine. Henry's first marriage to Catherine only produced one child who lived past infancy, a daughter, Mary, born in 1516. However, Henry was desperate for a male heir, and in 1533 he had his marriage to Catherine declared invalid on the grounds that she had been married to his elder brother, Arthur. His own marriage to Catherine had been sanctioned by the Pope at the time, Julius II. However, Henry was now citing biblical passages from the book of Leviticus as a pretext for an annulment, because Catherine had been married to Arthur. After failing to obtain papal sanction for dissolving his marriage, Henry broke with the authority of Rome. While this is often cited as the beginning of the Protestant Reformation in England, this was not Henry's intention. He merely wanted to exercise sole authority over religion in his own country, where it would serve his own purposes. He married his second wife, Anne Boleyn, in 1533. This marriage also produced one daughter, Elizabeth. Failing once again to get a male heir, Henry had Anne Boleyn executed for adultery and treason, along with 5 men from the court, in May 1536. 11 days later, Henry married for a third time. The bride was Jane Seymour. Jane gave birth to Edward, Prince of Wales, in October of 1537. Unfortunately, Jane died of sepsis 12 days later. She was the only one of Henry's wives to receive a queen's funeral. The German noblewoman Anne von Cleves, or more commonly known as Anne of Cleves in the English-speaking world, became Henry's 4th wife in 1540. He divorced her several months later. Anne cooperated with the divorce and was rewarded with several estates, a generous pension, and was welcome at the English court. Henry married Catherine Howard, a former lady-in-waiting of Anne's. This was a pattern with him. Later that same year, Catherine was executed for adultery with 2 men in 1542. Ironic that history was repeating itself backwards. Henry first divorced a foreign-born Catherine for an English Anne, whom he later executed, and less than a decade later divorced a foreign-born Anne for an English Catherine, who he executed for the same crimes. Catherine Parr would be Henry's 6th and last queen in 1543. She was a widow twice over, but had no children. Henry VIII died on January 28, 1547, at the age of 55. Henry VIII is most famous for his 6 marriages. His succession of wives can easily be remembered with the rhyme, divorced, beheaded, died, divorced, beheaded, survived. Edward VI succeeded his father Henry VIII to the English throne at the age of 9. His 2 maternal uncles, Thomas and Edward Seymour, acted as regents for the young king. It was under Edward that Protestantism truly took a hold in England. The young king died at the age of 15, leaving his 2 half-sisters, Mary and Elizabeth, as the logical candidates next in line for the throne. However, Edward named his cousin, the Lady Jane Grey, as his heir. Jane was a devout Protestant, as was Edward. Edward's Catholic half-sister Mary, not willing to be disinherited from the line of succession for a second time, as she had been under her father, raised forces and successfully declared herself Queen of England in 1553. She was the first Queen Regnant of England, that is, a woman who ruled in her own right. Jane Grey and several of her relatives were executed the following year. Mary negotiated a marriage for herself with her cousin Philip II of Spain. The marriage did not produce any children. Mary also attempted to bring England back to its traditional Catholic faith, which resulted in the burning of over 200 people for heresy, or crimes against the Church. Mary died in 1558 at the age of 42. Finally, the last Tudor monarch, Elizabeth I, ascended to the English throne in November 1558. The 25-year-old queen would rule for almost 45 years. She never married or had children. Instead, she named her cousin, James VI of Scotland, as her heir. He would become James I of England when Elizabeth died in 1603. This united England and Scotland under one monarch. The Tudor dynasty was over, and the age of the Stuarts had begun. Here's the Tudor rose. It's red, it's white, it's Lancaster, it's York. Okay.